Hi there, and welcome to Best of Preps Pigskin Picks. I'm Herald Review Managing Editor Matt Hickman, joined by our sports editor Bruce Wetton. Bruce, we're going to recap last week's football games, high school games. Obviously, it starts and ends with the pick, which Bisbee claims back for the first time since COVID wasn't even in our vernacular. Tell us about that game.
What a game! What a game! What a
Yeah,
game! I'm so proud of Bisbee. They deserved that win. And folks, if you didn't see it, you missed a heck of a game. It was My goal was met. They calculated tickets at 3,400 people,
yeah,
and those were not allowed. That's not even counting the freebies that they let in. It was standing room only. But in that game, Sebastian Lopez, man,
mm.
he was a one man show. He ran for 3 touchdowns, threw for another, and Bisbee, they played their game, and Douglas still had a chance there late in the game, and they were driving, and Lopez threw a pick inside the Douglas 30, and it was a horrible pass, and Sebastian will admit it because he said it was, and Mark Spurs of the Herald Review that was there shooting for us, he said, "You watch, he's going to come back and redeem himself."
Yeah.
And on the following series, what happens? Ivan throws a pass into the end zone, and out of nowhere, Sebastian shows up to claim it,
Yeah.
seal the win, and Bisbee prevails 26-13. So Bisbee wins the 154th meeting
Yeah.
of the Bisbee-Douglas game and snaps a 3-year skid to the
Mm-hmm.
Douglas Bulldogs.
Absolutely. So that, I mean, a very interesting game there. Obviously, the fanfare. Douglas now picks up its second loss, Bisbee its second win. So we'll talk a little bit in our next episode here about what they have coming up.
Real fast here, Bisbee ran that day for 322 yards
Mm-hmm.
on the Bulldogs, man. And Bryson Meyer, who had 5 TDs the first game, had no TDs. So Douglas was keying on Meyer, but they couldn't stop Lopez. And he was only 78 yards passing, but he had 215 yards rushing on 12 carries.
So Bisbee will try to stay unbeaten this Friday at home against Eloy Santa Cruz, while Douglas goes on the road to Tucson Saguaro looking for their first win. So we'll tune in, check out our look ahead issue here in the next episode. Let's jump over to Buena. That's where I was at last Friday. For 3 quarters, a really impressive effort by Buena. I mean, just absolutely dominant. They were up 27-0 at halftime, but by a minute into the fourth quarter, it was 27-21 as they really just let Ironwood Ridge climb back in the game. But then, when they needed to, they made the plays on offense and on defense to secure a really comfortable win, 49-21 against Ironwood Ridge.
Going into that game, the question mark was Andres Bonilla. Was he going to get the 26 yards he needed to surpass 3,000 for the career? And he did. He actually finished that day with only 73 yards, but now in his 4-year career at Buena High School, he has 3,048 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 431 carries. Heck of a career for Andres Bonilla.
Yeah, and he's just warming up. He's getting started. Him and Lujan, they're an amazing 1-2 punch. Buena really didn't try to run the ball at all. They were just taking advantage downfield in the passing game and really letting him. Nash Moore is having an unbelievable season. He's got 9 touchdowns in 2 games. I want to say he's only got like 5 incomplete. He's 22 of 27 for probably 600 something yards.
And in that game, 13
Yeah.
of 17, 289 yards, and 4 touchdowns, Matt. He's
Yeah,
got to be Cochise County's leader. I haven't had a chance to format
yeah.
the leaders in passing and rushing and receiving. That's my goal for this week. But Nash Moore's got to be a near to the top.
Absolutely. Although he was actually outpassed in that game by Jaden Martinez of Ironwood Ridge, who had 330 yards passing.
So it was an airfield game.
It was an airfield game. Well, and you get up 27-0. It's just easy to rack those fantasy points up when you're behind 27-0 and you make a little run. But, Buena does need to work on his pass defense a little bit. I mean, they can be very dominant, but when they get in trouble, it's usually their pass defense that lets teams back in it.
We're down to 3 teams that are undefeated in Cochise County.
Bisbee, Buena, and St. David.
There you go, Matt.
Well, let's use that segue to talk about, St. David, they played last week.
They played last week against Kearney Ray, and they blew them out 65-0, as I had predicted. I knew it was going to be a blowout, a little bit worse than I predicted. But this freshman quarterback, again, 100 yards passing, even on 6 of 9, 2 touchdowns. And St. David had 320 yards rushing and 100 yards passing. I mean, St. David, I don't see them going undefeated. They're going to play some really tough teams here pretty soon, but I see them going probably 7-1, if not 6-2, because they only play 8 games in the regular season, whereas the other schools play 10. But St. David is looking really tough. They're going on the road Friday. We'll be talking about that game here in the next segment. But yeah, we're down to 3 undefeated teams: St. David, Benson, and St. David, Bisbee, and Buena.
Yeah. Two teams last week up on the I-10 part of Cochise County, Benson and Wilcox, both suffered defeats.
Ooh.
Benson went into Morenci and lost 35-25. Wilcox was home against Sholo, lost 21-7. Both, pretty respectable losses against some pretty quality programs. They're both off this week, so they've got some things to work on. Benson is 0-2 now, but they've had, or 1-2. They won their first, but they've had some good outings against some quality teams, losing to Phoenix Christian.
They're both on 2-game skids right now, so they need to get this thing turned around. Morenci was their homecoming. They had it so early, but that was their homecoming. And Sholo just came down and they just rolled over Wilcox.
Yeah, 21-7. The score isn't that indicative, maybe of. It sounds like Wilcox is having a little bit of trouble with their offense, but they started slow last year and may yet pick it up.
They only had 164 yards rush and only 41 pass for the entire game. So just not even 200 yards total offense.
Probably the strangest game of last weekend that we need to talk about was out in Tombstone, where the Yellow Jackets picked up their first win over Fort Thomas
on half a field.
54-6, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was over San Carlos.
San Carlos.
Yep, and that was when I talked to the coach on Saturday morning. He was chuckling, or correction, it was 58-6.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah." He says, "I hope you have some time. We've got some things to tell you." And first of all, in the previous game, I was not aware of this, and he did not mention this on purpose because he did not want the word getting out, but the word's out now, that there was an altercation on the field at the end of the game with Highland where 3 of his players got ejected, one of which was the quarterback DJ Elias, senior running back Kobe Jones, and senior lineman Caden Bidgood. And so when AI ejects a player now, they're not only ejected for the remainder of that game, but they're ejected now for the next 2 games. So they were going into this game minus 3 key players. And had I known that, I probably would have predicted the score to be a little bit closer. But hats off to the backups that came in, because senior Hunter Griesmer and sophomore Hank Moody both played quarterback for Tombstone this game and both shined. Both quarterbacks were 2 of 4 for 80 yards, but Hunter also had 10 carries for 171 yards and 2 TDs. Jemiah Wallace, 13 carries, 154 yards. And as a team, the Tombstone Yellow Jackets ran for 405 yards. Now, the interesting tidbit was on Thursday, Tombstone did a testing with their lights, and they have 4 sets of lights. So first light in the north left corner comes on, no problem. Second light in the south corner comes on, no problem. Third light in this corner over here comes on, and this light comes on. So on Friday, they go to turn them on again. Well, 1, 2, and 3 come on, but 4 doesn't come on. And so it happens to be the darkest end of the field on the north right corner. I've been at the stadium, and I hate shooting down there because it really tests my flash. And so I try to shoot on the south end. And so what they did, they started the game 30 minutes early. But as soon as it got dark to the point where they couldn't really see properly down there, if a team got to midfield, they'd flip and have them come back to where they just came from.
So kind of like half-court basketball where you take the ball back. But here's my question. So if you had the ball at your own, let's say 20, and then you have a breakaway run going 80 yards for a touchdown, what do you hit the 50-yard line and turn back around?
I would imagine that they would let him finish the run. And wherever he was tackled, if he got into the end zone, it'd be a touchdown. But if he got tackled at the 20, it would come back to the 20. But ironically, it never happened in this game. There was no long runs.
That's amazing because Tombstone certainly had a lot of rushing yards in that game.
And we're going to be at Tombstone Thursday, and I kidded the coach on this morning before I left Douglas to text him. I said, "Are all lights going to be working tomorrow?" And he said, "I hope so." And so, yeah.
Well, we all do, right? I guess you never know till you get out there. I think the last thing we have to talk about then is Valley Union. They got a quarterback back, and they got a nice win.
We got another team to talk about, too, but let's talk about Valley Union first. Dylan Mitchell, surprisingly, he was only out 3 weeks now instead of 2, or actually 2 weeks because 3. He was only out 2 weeks instead of 4, and he came back a week early, and he showed signs of rust. But I was predicting Valley Union to win with him, and without him, I said it was a pick'em game. And when I saw that he was actually back in the lineup, but I actually had heard Friday night while I was covering Bisbee that Mitchell was playing in Bobby Keevery, and I'm thinking, wow. So Valley Union beat Bobby Keevery that night by a score of 24-13. Mitchell had a rushing TD. Miles Richardson, who played quarterback for him the previous game, He also had a rushing TD, but he was back in his usual spot of running back, where he was actually able to shine that night. And he had 111 yards on 12 carries and a score. But probably one of the most interesting plays of the night came on the final score of the night. Valley Union's up 16-13 late in the game. Mitchell takes the ball and he's running free and he's about ready to get brought down. And he does a lateral to his lineman.
Oh, wow.
Who right there in the same place, just like you and I are. And it was a backward lateral, so it was a legal pass. The guy takes it 24 yards in for the rest of the carry.
Wow.
And scores. And so Valiant prevails 24-13. So Marshall Larson had an assist on a feed and scored a touchdown.
Well, there you go.
But I also want to talk about Breen.
Yeah, let's talk about Breen.
Breen got their first win of the season, and it was a school record. So hats off to the Eagles. I did not realize that 52 points. I thought they had scored more than that. No. They scored 52, and they beat Mission Prep at Keith Hampton Memorial Field 52-8. And that was their first win in Division III. And it broke the record by 1 point. Of 51 from last year. So Breen has their first win. They're off and going. And Coach said they played much better than they did against Mesa Highland. And so anyway, but I did scout last week that Mesa blew out their opponent last week by a lot more lopsided score than what they had beaten Breen the night before. So, Breen's got their win. And like I said, we got 3 teams undefeated. We still got Douglas, who's the lone winless team in Cochise County right now, next to Sierra Vista ALA.
Yeah.
Because Wilcox has a win, Tombstone has a win. Douglas just needs to get that one win, and that's not going to get any easier this week or next.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens here.
All right, fantastic stuff. Another week in the books, an exciting one. Bisbee gets the pick back, of course, is the headline, and the season is just getting warmed up, so it's really exciting stuff. Get out to a game Friday night. There's plenty of good ones in Cochise County. He's Bruce. I'm Matt. Have a great day.